What is going on, everybody? Another video of Real Fans. And today we're going to be discussing, kind of recapping, reviewing the 2024 season. Haven't really done that yet. So I figured we should take the time and figure out who the biggest underperforming teams were. I think everybody kind of has their own opinion on this. So I'm going to give my three. Joe's going to give his three, whether he agrees with me or not. We're going to bounce back and forth. I give one, he gives one. I'm going to kick it off to you, Jojo. What is your first underperforming team of the 2024 season?
But listen, guys, looking
And
at
do
the
you see them turning
standings,
it around?
I see them turning it around. Looking at the standings, obviously that tells a story. However, it doesn't really dictate the entire situation that an organization's in, right? But what stood out to me so far the most, the biggest underperformer, I have to say, was the 5-12 New York Jets in the AFC East.
Yeah, that was my first
Honestly,
one.
that was what a season, man. That you have Aaron Rodgers, which obviously the last few years, he's been in this boat, but really considering retirement. I mean, you have your head coach, fired mid-season. Take it back to last year, the unfortunate, accident for Aaron Rodgers with that Achilles injury on the first snap, second snap of the season. That's unfortunate. Came back and the Jets apparently were a quarterback away from winning a Super Bowl. Granted, they didn't even get a chance to get into the playoffs, and they're already dismantling this team. Man, just the entire organization from from top to bottom it's in shambles right now. We thought Zach Wilson was the problem. You put in Aaron Rodgers, and I don't think anything got fixed. And they got a couple star receivers as well to complement his game. It's the Jets number one for me, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you. I'll get my input on it. And if you're a Jets fan watching this, please, I've tried watching like Jets fans discuss this topic of what happened to the Jets, and I almost feel like they don't know what happened because it just on paper. I mean, this isn't even like a Cowboy situation. This is like, no, legitimately, the Jets looked. I mean, you have one of the greatest quarterbacks to play the game who's coming back healthy off of a really bad Achilles injury. You brought in Devontae Adams. You already had this young, dynamic defense that everybody was super high on. I was super high on myself.
Right.
You had a great offensive line. You had Brees Hall at the running back position. You had Garrett Wilson on the other side of Devontae Adams. This was just all you needed was that quarterback. You get the guy, he's healthy, he's back. And it's like, what happened? It's like you can't understand it. I mean, obviously, the coaching plays a big part into it as well, having him getting fired midway through the season because he wasn't necessarily performing was. But it's just one of those. It's just like, man, it's still like, what is going on with this Jets organization? They're just cursed. I mean, and I know what it's like being a Jaguar fan, like being a part of a cursed franchise. But yeah, I mean, in terms of do they turn it around next season? I don't think so. It's one of those situations where I have to believe it to see it because I'm done trying to be high on the Jets because I think even Jets fans are done trying to be high on the Jets because every time he seems like they're about to be like pretty competitive, they just completely fall apart and get dismantled. And so I don't see it really turning around this year. I don't think I'm not even sure if Rodgers is back. A part of me feels like he leaves. They try to get rid of him. They move on from him. That could
Rumors,
happen.
there's rumors to the Giants came out today, so stay tuned.
Rodgers has the chance to do the funniest thing ever and go play for the Minnesota Vikings because Sam Darnold is a free agent right now. I don't know if he's going to get re-signed. Obviously, they drafted their rookie quarterback last year, but come on, Rodgers, do it. Go to Minnesota. Do what your mentor couldn't. Win a Super Bowl with the Vikings.
Bro,
But
that'd be insane.
yeah, but anyways, I'll move on to my next team. I'm going to go with the San Francisco 49ers. This team was the reigning NFC champs last year, or the year prior. They went to the Super Bowl. They essentially brought back the same team. I know there's a lot of things with Brandon Ayuk and all this stuff, but they
Yeah,
brought back the same team. They had one of the best O lines. They ended, and then if you look at the stats too, they ended the season fourth in total yards on defense. No, my bad, in offense. And then they were top 10 in allowed yards a game in defense, and they were 29th in points allowed on defense. So it's one of those where it's like, how are you 10th in allowed yards, but then you're 29th in allowed points? Like, I don't understand that, like how that happened, how you're only averaging only just under 300 yards a game on you, but yet you're somehow giving up the most amount of points. Like,
With
it's such a
zone
weird
that zone defense,
phenomenon.
man, is yeah, that's insane.
So it's like the defense kind of cost them in a lot of situations. Obviously, they lost a ton of. I don't know if you followed the Niners a lot. For some reason, I always happen to be watching Niners games this past season, and the amount of close games they lost, and a lot of it goes down to just being unlucky or just the defense not showing up in opportunistic times, or even the offense and Brock Purdy not making those last ditch efforts to get to where they need to be, or just bad coaching calls. It's just one of those where it just wasn't their season. And that was a big shock to me because, like, obviously you're going into the NFC thinking that they're pretty much going to repeat and be a number one contender, but they don't even make the playoffs. They don't win the division. That was kind of crazy for me. Do I see them turning it around? I actually do. I think they bounce right back next year. I think it was just one of those years where things just kind of didn't work out. But yeah,
Yeah.
what do you think of that? And do you have another team?
Honestly, well, one, I agree with that. I do think they're gonna bounce back, especially with the great coaching they have, O-line, their defense, and they have so many key players. But what you forgot to mention, their best player, McCaffrey, was out for a couple games early on in
That's
the
true.
season. That changed the whole dynamic for this 49ers team. They had a slow start. They were just out of rhythm, and it was just too late to pick it up, right? I mean, they had some key wins, but they also had some key losses. I think I remember them losing to the Dolphins late in the season. Why? Struggling Dolphins team, like understand, trying to scrape their way into the playoffs. So, when you lose games like that, that's not the typical 49ers we've seen over the last few years who just dismantle and just wear teams down.
Hmm.
Like they just didn't have the physicality this year that they had over the last few years. Um, but that's my take on the 49ers. My next team that I really want to get into is none other.
See,
See, you know what? I'm not gonna say Jags because we never have high expectations for Jags.
yeah, yeah, I
But
felt the
I
same
will
way.
say Cincinnati Bengals.
Okay,
Cincinnati
okay.
Bengals.
I thought about putting them in my list. I didn't. I thought about it though.
Just one of the best offensive teams really we've seen in maybe the last few years. If we're talking just straight offense, we're talking yards, touchdowns, uh like catches, you know what I mean? Setting your offense up and the play calling on that. Obviously we all know what the defense did and how that let them down. They have one of the worst O lines in the game as well. But granted, to not even make the playoffs with a top five offense like that,
Disappointment.
it is a disappointment. It really is a disappointment. How do you
Yeah,
feel?
I'm with you. I like I said, I almost put the Bengals. The only reason I didn't put the Bengals my underperforming is in a way I kind of saw this coming. Like I knew going into the season that it felt like they didn't address anything. It's like you're rolling out there with the same squad. Like you said, like without Burrow and Chase, that team would be a bottom three team, like 100%. I mean, that team was awful on every single level. I mean, they lost their running back to Joe Mixon to the Houston Texans. The offensive line is still, I mean, I feel like we've been talking about this since the offensive line, since the year he got drafted.
He
This
got
man Burrow
drafted.
is running for his fucking life every Sunday. It is insane. And then the defense has just gotten progressively worse throughout the year since that Super Bowl run. And now, I mean, they were just getting blown. I mean, bad. I mean, and then they were just losing leads. I mean, they had like 2, 3 touchdown lead. There was one where they against the Chiefs, for example, they should have won that game, and they gave it away. Now, so do they turn it around next year? They're one of those. I don't really know if I have an answer until I see what the front office does in free agency and the draft, because that's going to dictate a lot on how I feel. I'm going to say that they improve. I think they make the playoffs next year as long as they're competent enough to put more pieces around this team to be better. Because even without that, they were still competing in that division. They were still competing in the wild card. towards the latest season because and the one thing they have to get right going into next year is starting off strong because for the past
Exactly.
3 years, they start off like 1-4 every single
Exactly.
time. And now you're just in this uphill battle the entire season.
Year after
And
year, you're in an uphill battle. It's
yeah, it's just like why can't they just start off smooth? So I don't know. But I'm gonna go into my next one, and I got no other than the Miami Dolphins.
Gabe's gonna love
Look,
this.
man, this is a Dolphins team. Every these past since the Mike McDaniel's years, and he brought in Tyreek Hill these past 2 seasons, I'm like, okay, the offense is cooking, the defense is good enough. Maybe they should be able to do something. Should they are they going to be able to compete with the Bills? They haven't been able to get over that Bills hump at all. Going into this season, I'm like, okay, they're running it back. Tua's hopefully going to be healthy the full season. And then what do you know? Second game of the week. I mean, second week, another concussion. And now there's a lot of things going like, should Tua even continue to play? I mean, there's a lot of things to worry about. I mean, in my personal opinion, you probably should hang it up. But also knowing the injury history that Tua had, they had probably the worst backup QB situation I've ever seen. It affected the whole team. That what was that guy? Skylar Thompson? That guy was the worst quarterback I've seen in the NFL in my entire life. And I've seen some bad quarterbacks being a Jaguar fan. That guy was horrendous. They bring in Pro Bowler, uh, what's his name? My gosh. Why am I Huntley. Pro Bowler Huntley into the field thinking he's going to turn it around. And this man was just as bad. I mean, it was awful. That stretch, I mean, they were losing to they were giving up 30 to like the Tennessee Titans. And I don't want to just put it all on the offense because the defense didn't step up either in these crucial games at times. They did in others, like against the Patriots and some of the other more weaker teams in the league. They were able to manage to keep teams under 20. So all you needed from your offense was to at least get 3 touchdowns. They couldn't do that. But at times when you did need them to step up, they weren't necessarily there. Um, Now, once Tua came back, they had a pretty damn good stretch. I was even telling Gabe like I think they're going to do it. Gabe. I think they're going to squeeze in. I mean, they went. I don't. They won like they won like 5 out of the last 7 or something like that. They did. They were going on a run. They came down to the final weekday. Obviously, they needed the
They needed
Broncos
to
to
lose.
lose.
Yeah.
That didn't happen because the Chiefs pretty much packed it in. And then it didn't even matter anyways because they got blown out by the Jets somehow in that final week. So it's one of those when they're healthy, they are a very scary team and I think they can beat anybody. But the problem is the health. It just seems like they can never get it right. Now, are they going to be better next year? I'm leaning towards the side of no. I think a lot of players are going to get fed up. I think
I
Mike
wanna eat.
McDaniels is going to be on a super short leash. I think Tua's on a super short leash. I think because of that pressure, they're not going to be able to perform well. Tyreek Hill may not even be there, which I don't really like the way he went about things. I think it was extremely unprofessional, but that's neither here or there. I I think this team is slowly going to get. They're going to try it one more year because we haven't seen nothing yet. I mean, we'll see once free agency actually hits.
Well, we haven't seen a complete
What they
season from them because there's always these injuries,
exactly,
and it's mostly revolving
exactly,
around Tua. So it's like there's always these what ifs, and then he comes back, and then it's too late
yeah.
for the last few years. That's
And
really the
they
story with the Dolphins.
just squeeze in, or they either are just out on the outside or they just squeeze in.
Well, they
It's like
just
one
squeezed
of
in,
those
and then
two.
guess who they have in the first round? The Buffalo
Bills.
Bills.
Then they can't get over that
You're not
hump.
beating them. You're not. It's too late. Like
And the
so.
thing is, if they remained consistent throughout the season, they would probably have a home field advantage, and they could probably avoid the Bills. I don't know, but either way, so now they're forced to go play in the cold somewhere because it's either Kansas City or Buffalo. It's just one of those. Yeah, it's the health and not really being deep. It feels like even if one of their players go down, it just doesn't seem like they're very deep. If you're a Dolphins fan, let us know down more. But I would curious. I would have loved to have Gabe on this to kind of uh, give me a little bit more insight. But yeah, do you have another underperformer?
Underperformer. There's many out there, but I guess another team that does stand out would for sure be your Jacksonville Jaguars. But we're not going to get into that this episode because we can talk about the Jags and the downfall, over the last few years, which, kind of converted Julian to a bust.
Coming next week.
But no, I think the teams that we mentioned, for sure. I mean, if you want, we could get into teams that made the playoffs that didn't go deep in the playoffs, in terms of underperforming as well. In terms of those expectations, you know what I mean, and where they should have been at. I really do think the Bills should have went to the Super Bowl. So in my eyes, I feel like they underperformed. This was their year. This was their chance to get over the hump.
Since you throw the playoffs in that, I don't want to say they underperformed because I feel like it's such a bad thing to say, but they should have been better when it came down to the most important game of the year, and that's the Detroit Lions. How are
Okay.
you basically flawless the entire season, played out of your mind, and then you lose to the Commanders? Granted, good
Yeah.
Commanders team,
Yeah.
not as good as the Detroit Lions. So I guess
Yeah.
those would be like our honorable mentions for like playoff disappointments. But yeah, I would say those are for sure the two big ones. But if you guys made it this far in the episode, we greatly appreciate it. Please leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. And yeah, if you're on audio, please leave a rating and a comment as well. Spotify got comments now. So leave a comment on there. And yeah, we'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out, everybody.